Some children have been telling me that I should give my suggestions as to what is expected in the History and Civics ICSE 2020 question paper. So today's video, especially for those who are still feeling a bit inadequate as far as the preparation is concerned. For others who are pit-pat with the syllabus and you know everything through and through, good, you should be able to get 100 out of 100. But for those who still are wondering where they should focus on, this is the video. I have got 50 questions that should give you the much needed last minute revision. So let's begin. The first question, what is quorum? Quorum is the required number of members that need to be present for the House to transact its business. The quorum for the Lok Sabha and the Rajya Sabha is 1/10. That means if you are asked a question like on a given day, 50 people are present in the Lok Sabha. Can the House conduct its proceedings? Give a reason. You could say no, because it does not have the requisite quorum. So for the Rajya Sabha, minimum 25 members need to be present. Question 2, what is an ordinance? It's a temporary law made by the President when the Parliament is not in session. An additional question to this question could be, how does the ordinance show the nominal position of the President? So, even though the President can make this law when the Parliament is not in session, when the House meets, the ordinance has to be approved by both the houses, failing which it will lapse. So at times, ordinance is also called as a temporary measure. When can the Speaker cast his vote? When there are equal votes or when there is a tie. This is also known as casting vote. What is a session? How many sessions are there? Session means when the two houses meet to conduct their business, it is known as session. There are 3 sessions. You have the winter session, the monsoon session, and the budget session. Why is the President elected indirectly? You could write, this could come as a 1-mark question, give one reason why the President is elected indirectly, or you could get this as a long answer for 3 marks. So one reason, the framers of the Constitution wanted the presidential election to be a dignified and quiet affair. Second, they do not wish to waste time, energy, and effort. The third point could be the President is only a nominal head. The real powers are vested with the Prime Minister. So if the President is elected directly, he could become a rival to the Prime Minister. State one function of the Cabinet. It's a very important question. You should know at least 4 points. What are the functions of the Cabinet? Here, if they ask you one, you should write, they determine the policies of the government. That could give you your 1 mark. What are the legislative powers of the Union Parliament? This is a very important question. Union Parliament, legislative powers. You could write 4. First, Union Parliament can legislate on matters in the Union list. The Union Parliament can legislate on matters in the concurrent list. The Union Parliament can legislate on matters in the state list. It can amend the Constitution, and it also has residuary powers, means it can make matters on laws which are neither in the Union list, state list, or concurrent list. What do you mean by a federal structure of the government? Simply, federal structure means there are 2 levels of governance. We have a state government and a union government. However, we have a federal government, but it is federal in structure but unitary in spirit, which means that if there is a dispute between the center and the state, it is the will of the center that will prevail. Name the 3 lists according to which the powers are divided between the center and the state. So as I just mentioned, state list, union list, concurrent list. You should know at least one subject that is there in the state list, union list, and concurrent list. Under what conditions can the Union Parliament legislate on state list? This has come here last year for 1 mark. It could come as a 3-mark question. So what are the 3 conditions? First, when 2 states or 2 or more states decide that the matter has become of national importance, they can request the Union Parliament to make a law on that subject. Or the Rajya Sabha passes a resolution by a 2/3 majority saying that a matter is of national importance and the Parliament should make laws on it. And finally, when there is an emergency. To whom does the President tender his letter of resignation? To the Vice President. Similarly, the Speaker will tender his resignation to the Deputy Speaker. What do you mean by jurisdiction? Name the 3 types of jurisdiction enjoyed by the Supreme Court. So jurisdiction means the power that the court has to hear and decide cases. The 3 types of jurisdiction of the Supreme Court: original, appellate, and advisory. You should know the definition of each. What is original jurisdiction? It means the cases come directly to the Supreme Court in the first instance. They are not heard in the lower courts. Give 3 examples of original jurisdiction. When there's a dispute between the center or the state, or there is a dispute between state versus state. It could be a dispute between center and the state on one hand versus another state. When there is a matter of fundamental rights, or when there's a matter which deals with the interpretation of the Constitution. These are 5 examples, any 4 you must know. What is appellate jurisdiction? Appellate jurisdiction means the Supreme Court has the power to hear cases which have already been heard in the lower courts. So you appeal to the Supreme Court and then the case from the lower court goes to the Supreme Court. Give 3 examples of appellate jurisdiction. There are civil cases, criminal cases, and constitutional cases. When you say constitutional cases, these are cases which deal with an interpretation of a part of the Constitution. Criminal cases, it could be where the lower court has acquitted the criminal, but the high court has given him a death sentence. And civil cases, when it is dealing with a matter of national importance. What is advisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? Advisory jurisdiction is also known as consultative jurisdiction. So it means that the Supreme Court can give advice to the President. The President can ask for the advice of the Supreme Court. Now, because it is only advice, the Supreme Court can choose to give advice or can refuse. Likewise, the President can accept the advice or he may not accept it. It is not binding on the President. What do you mean by judicial review? Important question. The Supreme Court has the power to review the laws that are passed by the Union Legislature or the State Legislature. Union Legislature means Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha. State Legislature means Vidhan Sabha, Vidhan Parishad, or State Legislative Assembly or State Legislative Council. If it finds that the laws passed by these legislative bodies is violating the Constitution, it can declare those laws as null and void. This is the power of judicial review. What is revisory jurisdiction of the Supreme Court? This means the Supreme Court can review its own judgments. Because the Supreme Court is a court of record, it cannot allow errors to continue indefinitely, and hence they need to review the judgments. Also, this is based on the idea or the understanding that human judgment is fallible. We can make a mistake, and hence we cannot allow those errors to continue. So that is revisory jurisdiction. Do not get confused between judicial review and revisory jurisdiction. Why is the Supreme Court called the court of record? Now this could be a long answer. So first you will write, the Supreme Court is called a court of record because all its judgments are recorded and preserved. Second, they are used as precedents or examples. They cannot be questioned when they are used as examples. In a similar case, other courts have to give a similar decision. The Supreme Court is also called a court of record. Under that, you could also write the point that it can punish for contempt of itself. What are the judicial powers of the Union Parliament? You could write they can impeach the President, they can impeach the Chief Justice of India. Judicial powers. Understand the word judicial. It has to do with the system of justice. What are the electoral powers of the Union Parliament? Again, the key word is electoral. So you have to write the Parliament can elect the President, they can elect the Vice President, they can elect the Speaker. You get your 3 points. You could get it as a 1-mark question also. You can write any 1 point. How does the Parliament exercise control over the executive, or how does the Parliament ensure ministerial responsibility? Both the question being the same. How does the Parliament keep the ministers under check? So this could come as a 4-mark question. If it comes as a 1-mark question, you can write any 1 point. It could come as how does the Parliament exercise control over the executive? Give one way in which it exercises control. But normally this comes as a 4-mark question. So you simply write through question hour, which is also known as interpellation, no confidence motion, adjournment motion, and cut motion. Next, how does the Constitution ensure the independence and impartiality of the judges? Now, this again is a long answer. They could either give you the different aspects and ask you to elaborate, or you can write 4 points. So first you can write the appointment is without any political bias or personal favoritism. Appointment is by the President, who in turn will consult the Chief Justice of India and other 4 senior most judges. Then you could write salaries are paid, very high salaries are paid from the Consolidated Fund of India. Then you could write there is security of tenure. They cannot be removed from office till they reach the age of 65. Then there's prohibition of service. They cannot serve after they have retired. Then there is punishment for contempt of court. Or you could write the salaries are not varied, or they are not reduced unless there's a financial emergency in the country. Also, there can be no criminal suit initiated against them. Also, the discussion of the conduct of a judge will never be undertaken in the Parliament until and unless it's an impeachment motion that's going on. So these are different ways in which the Constitution ensures the independence of the judges. Question number 23. Name the process by which the President is removed. Impeachment. Describe the procedure of impeachment. Now this could come as a 4-mark question. In this, you need to write 4 points. See, the ICSE is very clear. If it's a 2-mark question, you are expected to write 2 points. You write 3 points, you get your 3 marks. You write 2 points, you get your 2 marks. Describe the procedure of impeachment. So the first thing you will write is the motion or the resolution to remove the President can originate in either house, either Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha. You need to give a 14-day notice before starting such a resolution. Suppose the resolution has been raised, the motion to impeach the President has been raised in the Lok Sabha. So the Lok Sabha has to pass the resolution by a 2/3 majority. Then it goes to the Rajya Sabha. The Rajya Sabha will again investigate the charges. They also need to pass it by a 2/3 majority. When it is passed by both the houses, the President can appear, he can make his defense. And if it is passed by both the houses, then the President is impeached. However, in India, till date, no President has been impeached. What do you mean by a single integrated judiciary? A single integrated judiciary means that in a country, the Supreme Court is at the apex. Below that come the high courts, then below them come the subordinate courts. All the courts that lie within the territory of India are subject to the control of the Supreme Court. Whatever the Supreme Court says is binding on all the courts. This is what we mean by single integrated judiciary. What are the qualifications required to be a judge of the Supreme Court? Apart from the fact that he has to be a citizen of India, it is important that he should have served as a judge in the High Court for 5 years, or as an advocate in the High Court for 10 years. Now, both the aspects are important. The designation, a judge or an advocate, and the tenure. If you miss either of this, you won't get your marks. What is Lok Adalat? People's Court. Give 3 advantages of Lok Adalat. So you could write they give speedy and inexpensive justice. They reduce the burden of the other courts. They provide legal aid to the weaker sections. And you could also write that they work on a spirit of compromise, so both the parties are satisfied. Name the highest civil court in the district. You will write Court of the District Judge. If you just write District Court, you will not get your marks. Name the highest criminal court in the district. It is the Sessions Court. What is the distinction between the civil courts and criminal courts? Now, this question could also be, what is the difference between Court of the District Judge and Court of the Sessions Judge? Question means the same. So you can write it in a tabular form, write on one side civil court, criminal court. Then first point could be, it is the highest civil court in the district. On the other hand, it is the highest criminal court in the district. The second point could be, it is presided over by a district judge. On the other side, you will write it is presided over by the sessions judge. Then on this side, for civil courts, you will write it handles civil cases such as disputes leading to pertaining to marriage or property. On the other hand, criminal cases, they deal with cases pertaining to dacoity, robbery, murder, etc. On the last point you could write is the district judge of the civil court. He has some administrative powers, while the sessions judge does not have any administrative powers. Give 2 administrative functions of the district judge. So first, he maintains law and order, and second, he oversees the collection of taxes and revenue. What are the exclusive powers of the Rajya Sabha? Very important. It could come as a 1-mark question or as a 3-mark question. First, the Rajya Sabha is a permanent chamber. It can never be dissolved. Second, it can allow the Union Parliament to make laws on matters in the state list that we already saw. Then third, in case of an emergency, the Rajya Sabha assumes extraordinary powers. It becomes the de facto or the de jure parliament. It assumes all powers. And finally, the 4th point, it can create all India services. Very important question. What are the exclusive powers of the Lok Sabha? So first point, no confidence motion can only be introduced in the Lok Sabha. Remember, no confidence motion can only be started by the leader of the opposition. Then adjournment motion can be only in the Lok Sabha. Then money bill can originate only in the Lok Sabha. And in case of ordinary bill where there's a deadlock, the Lok Sabha, the will of the Lok Sabha prevails because of its numerical strength. What are the powers of the president? Now this either can come as a 4-mark question where you need to write 2 executive and 2 legislative, or you could get it as a 1-mark question, give one particular power of the president. Now to ensure that you don't get confused, you must understand what the word means. For example, when they say executive, it means when the president is as the head. So the executive powers of the president means he's the head of the union, or the administration of the union territories is carried out in his name. Executive means because he's the boss, he's the head, he can make important appointments, like he can appoint the governor, he can appoint Chief Justice of India, or he can appoint the Attorney General. So all these come under executive powers. You cannot mix and write something else. When you come to legislative powers, remember legislative means law. When it comes to making laws, what are the powers that are enjoyed by the president? So first, you can write he can summon and prorogue the parliament. He can send messages to the parliament. He can nominate 12 members to the Rajya Sabha, 2 members to the Lok Sabha from the Anglo-Indian community if they are not adequately represented. Then his assent is required for a bill to become a law. He can issue an ordinance. All these come under legislative powers. You cannot mix and write something else. It has to be correct. Financial powers, so you could write the president can appoint the members of the finance commission. He causes the annual budget to be passed. What is the budget? It is an estimate of receipts and expenditure. Then it is presented by the finance minister. Then when you come to judicial powers of the president, you could write he can grant pardon. Also, you can write that no criminal suit can be initiated against him while he's in office, and he's not answerable to any court for the discharge of his powers. Then discretionary. Understand the word discretionary. It means where the president can decide on his own. Discretion means the ability to decide what he thinks is right. So discretionary powers, you can write in case of a coalition government, the president can decide who will be the prime minister. Or if a no confidence motion has been passed and the party is willing to resign. So whether further without plunging the country into another expensive election procedure, the president can ask another party if they would like to prove the majority. So that is one of his discretionary powers. Emergency powers. The president can declare an emergency, and during an emergency, the government of the state is suspended. Also, during an emergency, the president assumes extraordinary powers. So that is he can declare an emergency only when the cabinet ministers give it to him in writing. Military powers, you could write he's the supreme commander of the armed forces. You could write war and peace is declared in his name. Diplomatic powers, when it deals with two countries, relationship between two countries, you could write he appoints ambassadors. You could write all treaties between countries are signed in his name. So this is a very important question, out of which executive and legislative is very, very important. Do not mix up these powers. Also, discretionary comes very often in the exam. You are asked to give one discretionary power of the president. The next question, what is an emergency? You could write it's an unforeseen situation which demands immediate action. The three types of emergencies, you could write national emergency or general emergency when there is fear of an external attack or an external aggression. Second is emergency due to the breakdown of constitutional machinery in a state, means when there is a law and order breakdown in a state. And finally, a financial emergency. So in India, there has never been a financial emergency. When can a national emergency be declared? So there are 2 points you could write. One, when there is a threat of external aggression. For example, a neighboring country is attacking India, there could be a national emergency that is declared. The national emergency can be declared only when the ministers of the cabinet gives it to the president in writing. That is one way in which the cabinet is superior, or they have a higher rank than the other council of ministers. It's an important distinction between cabinet and council of ministers. What are the qualifications required to be the president or the vice president of India? All the qualifications are the same. For example, citizen. Second is he should be 35 years of age. The only difference is the president should be qualified to be a member of the Lok Sabha, while the vice president should be qualified to be a member of the Rajya Sabha. When does the president address a joint sitting of the parliament? So one, when at the commencement of a session every year. Second, after the general election when the first session is held. Also, when there is an emergency. What is Electoral College? Electoral College is the body that elects the president and the vice president. What is the composition of the Electoral College for the election of the president? Now, this is important because there's a difference when there is an election of the vice president. So when you say composition of the Electoral College for the election of the president, so who would all take part in it? Remember, it is only the elected members of the Lok Sabha, elected members of the Rajya Sabha. If you simply write members of the Lok Sabha, members of the Rajya Sabha, you will not get marks because nominated members of both the houses do not have the privilege of taking part in presidential elections. So composition of the Electoral College: 1, elected members of Lok Sabha, elected members of Rajya Sabha, members of the State Legislative Assembly, and members of the Union Territory, elected members of the Union Territory of Delhi and Pondicherry or Puducherry. What is the composition of the electoral college for the election of the vice president? So for the vice president, only two categories of people come: elected members of Lok Sabha, elected members of Rajya Sabha. So state legislative assemblies or the union territory members do not take part in the election of the vice president. So for example, you could get a question: Mr. XYZ is a member of the legislative assembly. Can he take part in the election of the vice president? The answer will be no, because for the vice president, only members of Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha, they can take part, and only the elected ones, not the nominated ones. State two powers and functions of the Vice President of India. The first one you could write, he's the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. Second, you could write, he presides over the meetings of the Rajya Sabha. You could write, the functions of the Vice President are very similar to the functions of the Speaker in the Lok Sabha. You could write, he can take over the office of the President in case of his absence. Interestingly, the Vice President of India does not get his salary as the Vice President. He gets it as the ex officio chairman of the Rajya Sabha. What is collective responsibility? Collective responsibility, all members, all the ministers are collectively responsible to the Lok Sabha. They swim and sink together. When a no confidence motion is passed, all of them have to resign. So we move on to the next question. What is individual responsibility? All the ministers are individually responsible to the president. They can be asked questions on the working of their departments, and if the prime minister is not happy, they may be asked to submit their resignations. So you could either get collective responsibility or individual responsibility as a single question, or you may be asked to differentiate between the two. What do you mean by bicameral legislature? So bicameral, bi means two. So in India, we have a Lok Sabha and a Rajya Sabha. There are two houses. That is what it means that we have a bicameral legislature. What does the Union Parliament comprise? If you get this question, remember to write the President, Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. Give one unitary feature of the government. So we have a federal structure, we have a government at the center and a government at the state, but we have a unitary feature. For example, we have single citizenship. We all are citizens of India. We are not citizens of a particular state, unlike the US. How is the speaker elected? The speaker is elected by the members of the Lok Sabha from among themselves. What are the functions of the speaker? Now, if they ask you a general question like this, you can write any functions. You could write about he presides over the business of the house. He decides the admissibility of questions. He decides whether a bill is a money bill or not. Or he has some disciplinary functions. Or you could write, in case of defection, he is the one who can decide whether the person is disqualified from being a member of the house. So if they ask you just functions, you can write any form, but if they specify, then you have to be specific too. What are the disciplinary functions of the speaker? So remember, if the question is this, how does the speaker maintain discipline, or how he acts like a monitor of the Lok Sabha? So you could write one, that he maintains order in the house. In case there is grave disorder, he can adjourn the house. If somebody uses unparliamentary language, he can expunge those words. He can decide if a person is disqualified on the basis of the anti-defection law. Also, when it comes to how long the speaker is in office, remember, he's in office till the new speaker comes into the office. So even if the Lok Sabha is dissolved, the speaker continues to be in office. Under what provision can a non-member of the parliament be appointed as minister? So a non-member of the parliament can be appointed as minister, but he has to get himself appointed, or he has to get himself elected to either of the house, Lok Sabha or Rajya Sabha, within 6 months. So with this, we come to the end of the revision. I have given you 50 questions. This should give you the much needed revision. Do it thoroughly, do it well. Remember, if it's a 1 mark question, you are expected to write 1 point. If it's a 2 mark question, you will write 2 points. and it goes on. It's good for you to write a heading and then write the points 1, 2, 3, 4 when you're writing your structured answers. Write to the point, remember the keywords. Keywords are important in history and civics. Thank you. All the best. Do well.